Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in history when heaven entrusts humanity with something so powerful that it cannot be placed in every hand. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is sacred. Tonight, we are not here to be entertained by ideas or inspired by emotion alone. We are here because something has been placed within you that responds when truth is spoken, something that awakens when purpose is named. There is a weapon, unseen by the natural eye, yet unstoppable in the spirit, and it has never belonged to the crowd. This weapon is not sharpened by anger nor fueled by fear. It does not operate through force, volume, or dominance. It is activated by alignment. It responds to faith that is lived, not just spoken. It moves when a person decides to agree with heaven, even when circumstances argue otherwise. The chosen are not chosen because they are perfect, but because they are willing to believe when logic collapses, willing to stand when silence would be easier, willing to carry light into places where darkness assumed ownership. Many people want power without intimacy, authority without surrender, victory without transformation. But this weapon refuses to work in divided hearts. It only responds to those who have learned to listen before they speak, to yield before they lead, to trust before they see. It is released through obedience, strengthened by humility, and multiplied through love. When wielded correctly, it breaks cycles, restores identity, and shifts atmospheres without announcing itself. You may have wondered why certain battles pushed you deeper instead of breaking you, why resistance followed your obedience, why pressure refined rather than crushed you. It is because this weapon awakens under weight. It reveals itself in adversity. It chooses carriers who understand that faith is not an escape from reality, but a higher agreement with it. And when it is activated, it does not just change outcomes. It redefines what is possible for everyone watching, for everyone waiting, for everyone who will one day realize that they too were being prepared all along. The weapon is spiritual authority, not human strength. And this distinction changes everything about how life is approached, battles are faced, and victories are sustained. Human strength relies on visibility, numbers, validation, and effort that demands recognition. Spiritual authority moves quietly, often unnoticed, yet it carries weight that shifts outcomes without striving. It is not loud, aggressive, or desperate to prove itself. It flows from alignment rather than ambition, from knowing rather than forcing. Many people exhaust themselves trying to win spiritual battles with natural tools, wondering why resistance increases the harder they push, unaware that authority does not come from effort but from position. Spiritual authority is established before action ever begins. It is rooted in identity, not activity. When a person understands who they are and whose they are, they stop fighting for approval and start standing in agreement. Authority does not ask permission from circumstances. It does not negotiate with fear. It does not bend to pressure. It stands because it knows it has the right to stand. This is why two people can face the same obstacle, use the same words, apply the same strategies, yet experience entirely different results. One is striving from strength. The other is releasing authority. Human strength diminishes under pressure. It weakens with fatigue, discouragement, and delay. Spiritual authority intensifies under pressure because resistance confirms relevance. When opposition rises, authority does not panic because it recognizes resistance as a reaction, not a threat. Authority understands that storms do not determine direction, they reveal foundation. Strength asks, how much more can I push? Authority asks, what has already been granted? Strength tries to dominate outcomes. Authority releases outcomes by alignment with purpose. This weapon cannot be manufactured through confidence alone. Confidence without authority collapses when challenged. Authority remains steady even when emotions fluctuate. It does not depend on mood, applause, or instant results. It is sustained by truth. Truth about identity, truth about calling, truth about source. This is why authority is often most visible in those who appear least impressive to the natural eye. They are not trying to impress. because they are not insecure about their position. They know that authority does not need permission to function. Many confuse authority with control. Control manipulates. Authority influences. Control demands compliance. Authority invites alignment. Control is driven by fear of loss. Authority is driven by assurance of purpose. When authority speaks, it does not argue. It does not defend itself. It releases clarity, and clarity carries weight. This is why authority changes atmospheres before it changes circumstances. Rooms shift. Resistance softens. Confusion loses its grip, not because of volume, but because of presence. Human strength competes. Spiritual authority completes. Strength seeks to overpower. Authority seeks to establish order. Strength reacts to problems. Authority responds from vision. Strength measures obstacles. Authority measures assignment. This is why authority remains calm in chaos. It understands that chaos is not a sign of defeat, but a signal that alignment is being challenged. Authority does not rush to fix everything. It stands firm long enough for truth to expose what does not belong. Those who carry this weapon learn to stop proving and start positioning. They understand that authority flows best through surrender, not self-promotion. The more they yield to purpose, the more authority increases. The less they strive to be seen, the more impact they release. They do not fight for significance because they operate from significance. They do not chase influence because influence follows authority naturally. This weapon refuses to work in hands driven by ego, fear, or comparison. It responds to humility, obedience, and trust. When spiritual authority replaces human strength, exhaustion gives way to endurance, frustration gives way to clarity, and striving gives way to rest that still produces movement. The battles change, the language changes, the posture changes. Life is no longer about surviving pressure, but about standing steady while pressure rearranges itself around truth, while resistance loses its power, while purpose advances quietly, firmly, inevitably, through a people who no longer rely on what they can do, but on who they are aligned to be. Chosen means aligned, not elevated above others, and this truth dismantles one of the most dangerous misunderstandings surrounding purpose and calling. Being chosen has nothing to do with superiority, entitlement, or spiritual rank. It is not a badge of honor meant to separate people into higher and lower categories. It is an invitation into agreement. Alignment is the quiet decision to say yes to truth, even when it costs comfort, reputation, or certainty. Many want the language of being chosen, but few want the responsibility that alignment demands. Alignment requires humility because it removes comparison. When a person is aligned, they stop measuring their journey against someone else's progress. They are no longer distracted by who is ahead or behind, because alignment fixes the eyes forward. Elevation seeks visibility. Alignment seeks accuracy. Elevation demands recognition. Alignment demands obedience. This is why those who are truly aligned often go unnoticed for seasons. Their focus is not on being seen, but on being faithful to what they have been entrusted with. Being chosen does not exempt anyone from struggle. In fact, alignment often intensifies pressure because resistance rises where agreement is strong. The misconception that being chosen guarantees ease creates disappointment when challenges appear. But alignment was never designed to make life easier. It was designed to make life meaningful. It places a person in the flow of purpose, not the absence of opposition. Pressure does not mean misalignment. Often it confirms that those who are aligned carry a deep sense of responsibility, not privilege. They understand that being chosen means being available, teachable, and willing to be corrected. They do not assume they know everything. They stay close to the source because alignment can only be maintained through relationship. The moment pride replaces dependence, alignment begins to drift. This is why alignment is not a one-time decision, but a daily posture. Elevation without alignment produces instability. People may rise quickly, but they fall just as fast because they are not rooted. Alignment produces steadiness. Even when progress seems slow, there is a deep assurance that each step matters. Aligned people do not rush seasons. They respect timing. They understand that premature visibility can damage what has not yet been fully formed. Growth in hidden places builds strength that public platforms can never provide. Alignment also reshapes how success is defined. Success is no longer about applause, numbers, or external validation. It becomes about faithfulness, integrity, and consistency. An aligned person can celebrate others without jealousy because they are not competing for the same assignment. They know that purpose is not scarce. There is room for everyone to fulfill what they were designed to carry. This removes insecurity and replaces it with peace. When alignment becomes the focus, identity stabilizes. Opinions lose their power. Criticism no longer derails direction. Praise no longer inflates ego. The voice that matters most is the one that guides from within. This is why alignment protects the heart. It keeps motives pure and intentions clear. It allows a person to lead without dominating and serve without diminishing themselves. Chosen does not mean exempt from process. It means committed to process. It means staying faithful when results are invisible, staying obedient when instructions are unclear, staying grounded when opportunities multiply. Alignment teaches patience, discernment, and endurance. It produces leaders who carry authority without arrogance and confidence without comparison. These are the ones who influence atmospheres quietly, whose presence brings clarity, whose consistency builds trust, whose lives speak before their words are ever heard. Faith activates what effort cannot access. And this is where many people become exhausted, not because they lack desire, but because they are using the wrong key. Effort is valuable, discipline matters, and consistency has its place, but there are dimensions of breakthrough that do not respond to striving. Faith is not the absence of action. It is the alignment of action with belief. When effort moves ahead of faith, it beco. Miss labor. When faith leads, effort becomes cooperation rather than struggle. Many people work hard trying to force change, praying while panicking, moving while doubting, speaking while internally resisting what they claim to believe. Faith is not loud declarations made to convince oneself. It is a settled agreement that produces peace before results appear. This is why faith often looks slow on the outside but powerful beneath the surface. It allows time for roots to grow where no one is watching. Effort demands immediate proof. Faith is comfortable with process. There are doors that effort will never open, no matter how persistent it is. Not because effort is wrong, but because access is granted through trust, not tension. Faith accesses realms that logic cannot map. It sees possibility where evidence says no. It moves forward when conditions are incomplete. This does not make faith reckless. It makes it responsive to a higher instruction. Effort asks, what can I do? Faith asks, what is already available if I align with it? Effort is limited by capacity. Faith is limited only by belief. When effort reaches its ceiling, frustration begins. When faith reaches its depth, endurance increases. This is why people who live by faith can endure seasons that would break those who rely solely on effort. Faith supplies strength from assurance, not adrenaline. It sustains vision when progress is slow and rewards are delayed. Faith also protects from burnout. Burnout often comes from carrying responsibility without assurance. When a person believes everything depends on them, pressure multiplies. Faith releases the need to control outcomes. It understands that participation does not mean ownership of results. This creates freedom. A person can work diligently without being consumed because they are not trying to be the source, only a vessel. There is a difference between effort fueled by fear and effort guided by faith. Fear-driven effort is frantic, restless, and never satisfied. Faith-guided effort is focused, calm, and resilient. It knows when to move and when to wait. It recognizes that waiting is not inactivity, but preparation. Faith understands timing. It does not rush what needs maturity. Faith also sharpens perception. It allows a person to recognize opportunities that others overlook. Where some see obstacles, faith sees instruction. Where some see delay, faith sees refinement. This perspective changes how challenges are approached. Problems are no longer threats, but invitations to trust deeper. Faith reframes resistance as confirmation that growth is occurring. Effort often competes with others. Faith cooperates with purpose. Effort measures progress against external standards. Faith measures progress by obedience. This removes comparison and replaces it with clarity. A faith-driven life is not distracted by what others are doing because it is anchored in what it has been assigned. When faith activates what effort cannot access, doors open without force, connections align without manipulation, and provision appears without panic. Things begin to move not because pressure increased, but because resistance lost its grip. Faith does not deny reality. It speaks to reality from a higher agreement. It stands steady when circumstances fluctuate, grounded in conviction rather than convenience. Living by faith is not about abandoning responsibility, but about carrying it differently. It is choosing trust over tension, alignment over anxiety, obedience over obsession. It is allowing belief to lead and effort to follow, creating a rhythm where action flows from assurance, where work becomes worship, where progress unfolds in ways that could never be manufactured by striving alone. Intimacy with God determines effectiveness, not exposure, not volume, and not how visible a life or message appears to others. Intimacy is the unseen place where authority is formed, where clarity is sharpened, and where direction is received before action ever begins. Many want effectiveness without closeness, results without relationship, impact without surrender. But effectiveness is not produced on platforms. It is born in private spaces where attention is undivided and motives are revealed. Intimacy is not about information. It is about familiarity. It is learning to recognize the voice behind the instruction, the presence behind the power. Without intimacy, even good actions become mechanical. With intimacy, simple obedience carries unusual weight. This is why two people can do the same thing and see different outcomes. One is performing a principle. The other is responding to a relationship. Relationship releases timing, and timing multiplies effectiveness. Exposure can amplify what already exists, but it cannot create substance. Without intimacy, exposure magnifies insecurity, ego, and exhaustion. With intimacy, exposure becomes stewardship rather than pressure. Intimacy anchors identity so that visibility does not distort purpose. It keeps the heart aligned when applause grows and steady when silence stretches. Those who cultivate intimacy do not need constant affirmation because their assurance comes from connection, not crowds. Effectiveness flows from listening before speaking. Intimacy trains the ear to discern nuance, to recognize when to act and when to wait. It develops sensitivity to direction that cannot be learned through strategy alone. Many mistakes are made not because of bad intentions, but because action preceded intimacy. When intimacy leads, decisions carry wisdom rather than impulse. Movement becomes precise rather than reactive. Intimacy also deepens trust. It teaches reliance beyond understanding. When outcomes are unclear, intimacy sustains obedience. When results are delayed, intimacy keeps hope alive. It is easier to trust instructions when there is confidence in the one giving them. This trust removes anxiety and replaces it with peace that stabilizes action. Peace is not passivity, it is confidence without striving. Those who walk in intimacy understand that effectiveness is not measured by speed, but by accuracy. They are willing to slow down to ensure alignment. They are not pressured by comparison or driven by urgency that does not belong to them. Intimacy removes the need to rush because it provides assurance that timing is already accounted for. This patience protects from burnout and preserves longevity. Intimacy also refines character. It exposes motives gently but honestly. In closeness, pride cannot hide and fear cannot dominate. Intimacy invites transformation rather than performance. It produces integrity that remains consistent in public and private. This consistency is what gives effectiveness its credibility. People may be impressed by skill, but they are influenced by authenticity. When intimacy is prioritized, effectiveness becomes sustainable. Success no longer drains life because it flows from connection rather than consumption. There is room to rest without guilt and work without anxiety. Intimacy teaches rhythms that honor both action and stillness. It restores strength before it is depleted. The greatest breakthroughs often originate from moments no one else witnesses. Quiet prayers, surrendered thoughts, unseen obedience shape outcomes that later appear sudden. Intimacy carries foresight. It prepares the heart before challenges arise. It equips the spirit before demands increase. Those who remain close are rarely shaken because their foundation was established before pressure tested it. Intimacy with God does not remove difficulty, but it redefines it. Challenges become conversations rather than crises. Questions become invitations rather than threats. Effectiveness grows not because obstacles disappear, but because confidence and guidance deepens. Intimacy keeps direction clear when noise increases and focus steady when distractions multiply. From this place, influence expands naturally, authority strengthens quietly, and effectiveness flows as a byproduct of a life rooted in closeness rather than visibility. Obedience unlocks power before understanding arrives, and this truth confronts a deep desire to feel safe before moving forward. Most people want clarity first, confirmation second, and commitment last, but obedience works in the opposite direction. It asks for movement before explanation, trust before evidence, alignment before answers. This is not because understanding is unimportant, but because understanding often follows action, not the other way around. Waiting to fully understand before obeying can delay the very revelation being sought. Obedience is not blind compliance. It is informed trust. It is the decision to respond to direction even when the full picture is unavailable. This kind of obedience stretches comfort zones because it requires releasing control. Control demands predictability. Obedience embraces dependency. It acknowledges that guidance does not always come with a map, only with a next step. That next step carries power, not because it makes sense, but because it is aligned. Many miss moments of breakthrough because they pause too long at the threshold of logic. They analyze, evaluate, and debate what has already been made clear at the level of conviction. Obedience does not eliminate thinking. It simply refuses to let reasoning override direction. There are times when the mind cannot lead without misdirecting. Obedience allows the heart to move ahead while the mind catches up later. Power released through obedience often looks small at first. It may appear as a quiet decision, a private act, a simple yes that no one else notices, but power is rarely dramatic at the beginning. It accumulates through consistency. Each act of obedience builds momentum, opening access to greater clarity and increased authority. What begins as a step becomes a path. What feels uncertain becomes familiar through movement. Understanding often arrives as confirmation after obedience, not as permission before it. This is why those who wait for full clarity often remain stuck. Clarity is not always a prerequisite. Sometimes it is a reward. Obedience creates space for insight to emerge. It places a person in position to see what cannot be seen from a distance. Perspective changes with proximity. Obedience also reveals trust levels. It exposes where dependence truly lies. If obedience only happens when outcomes are guaranteed, trust is limited. But when obedience continues despite uncertainty, trust deepens. This deep trust unlocks resilience. It builds confidence that does not depend on immediate results. A person learns that guidance can be followed even when emotions fluctuate or circumstances resist. There is power in obedience because it aligns action with intention. Misalignment weakens impact. Even well-meaning efforts can fall flat when they operate outside of instruction. Obedience sharpens effectiveness by removing excess motion. It focuses energy. It prevents wasted effort spent chasing alternatives that were never assigned. When obedience leads, energy is conserved and direction is protected. Obedience also refines timing. Many frustrations are not about what is being done, but when it is being done. Obedience honors timing even when it feels inconvenient. It resists the urge to rush ahead or lag behind. This sensitivity to timing releases grace on action. Things begin to flow with less resistance, not because challenges disappear, but because alignment reduces friction. Those who practice obedience develop discernment. They become familiar with direction because they respond consistently. Discernment grows through application, not theory. Each response strengthens recognition. Over time, obedience becomes less about effort and more about instinct. Movement becomes natural rather than forced. Obedience also dismantles fear. Fear thrives in hesitation. It grows when decisions are postponed and conviction is ignored. Obedience interrupts fear by replacing speculation with action. Even small acts of obedience weaken fear's influence because they reinforce trust. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move despite it. Power unlocked through obedience is not always immediate, but it is always intentional. It may manifest as peace before progress, endurance before breakthrough, or confidence before change. Obedience shifts internal posture before it alters external conditions. It trains the heart to rely on guidance rather than guarantees, on faith rather than foresight, creating a life that moves forward not because everything is understood, but because direction is trusted. Pressure reveals the carrier, not the weapon, and this reality reshapes how adversity is interpreted. Many assume that pressure determines capacity, that intense circumstances expose flaws in what someone carries. But pressure does not define the weapon. It exposes the one holding it. The weapon remains constant in its design and potential. It is the carrier's alignment, maturity, and endurance that are revealed when weight is applied. This is why some collapse under pressure, while others become clearer, calmer, and more effective. Pressure strips away performance. It removes the ability to PR, attend, to rely on image, or to hide behind preparation alone. What remains under pressure is what has been cultivated in private. Habits surface, beliefs become visible. When pressure increases, reactions replace intentions. This is not a punishment, it is a revelation. Pressure simply accelerates exposure of what already exists within. Many fear pressure because they interpret it as a sign of impending failure. But pressure is often a sign of proximity to impact. Resistance increases where influence threatens to expand. Pressure is not always opposition. Sometimes it is preparation. It strengthens discernment, sharpens focus, and clarifies priorities. Those who understand this stop asking how to escape pressure and start asking how to remain steady within it. The carrier determines whether pressure refines or crushes. A carrier rooted in identity does not panic when pressure rises. They recognize that pressure cannot steal what was never built on approval or convenience. They do not interpret difficulty as rejection. They see it as an invitation to rely more deeply on alignment rather than adrenaline. This posture transforms pressure from an enemy into a tool. Pressure exposes motivation. When outcomes are delayed and comfort disappears, true reasons for obedience surface. If motivation is driven by recognition, pressure drains it. If motivation is driven by purpose, pressure strengthens it. This is why some quit when challenges persist, while others grow more committed. Pressure reveals whether commitment was to results or to assignment. Pressure also reveals depth. Shallow roots cannot sustain heavy weight. Depth is developed over time through consistency, patience, and faithfulness in unseen seasons. Those who have invested in depth do not need to scramble when storms arrive. They may bend, but they do not break. Pressure proves the strength of what has been foe. Said long before the moment of testing. The weapon does not malfunction under pressure. It functions as designed. It is activated through resistance, but the carrier must be able to hold steady for the weapon to be effective. This is why preparation often precedes opportunity. Capacity must grow before responsibility increases. Pressure expands capacity when it is met with trust rather than tension. Pressure also reveals leadership. Leaders emerge not by controlling outcomes, but by maintaining clarity when others lose it. In pressure-filled moments, people look for stability, not perfection. The carrier who remains grounded becomes a reference point for others. Their calm becomes contagious. Their confidence restores order. This influence is not forced, it is recognized. When pressure exposes weakness, it offers an opportunity for growth, not shame. Weakness revealed can be strengthened if it is acknowledged. Pressure brings honesty. It invites refinement. Avoiding pressure delays development. Embracing it accelerates maturity. This does not mean seeking hardship, but it does mean refusing to retreat when difficulty appears. Pressure also tests endurance. Endurance is not about intensity, but about consistency. Those who endure do not rely on bursts of effort, but on steady alignment. They understand that longevity requires pacing. Pressure teaches when to push and when to pause. It trains resilience by teaching balance. Those who understand pressure stop personalizing adversity. They do not assume every challenge is a personal failure. They discern what pressure is revealing and respond accordingly. They adjust posture, not purpose. They refine methods, not mission. Pressure becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. In the end, pressure never determines the power of the weapon. It determines the readiness of the carrier. The weapon remains available, effective, EEN unchanged. What pressure asks is whether the carrier has cultivated the stability, humility, and trust required to hold it without distortion, to release it without panic, and to remain steady while weight increases and responsibility expands. Love is the force that sustains its impact, and without it, even the most powerful expressions lose their longevity. Impact created without love may be immediate, impressive, and even effective for a moment, but it fades because it lacks the substance required to endure. Love is not a soft addition to power. It is the structure that holds power together. It ensures that influence builds rather than damages, restores rather than exploits, and heals rather than wounds. Love stabilizes intention. Without love, ambition quietly takes control. When ambition leads, results matter more than people, and success is measured by outcomes rather than transformation. Love reorders priorities. It places people above platforms and restoration above recognition. This shift does not weaken impact. It strengthens it by giving it a foundation that does not crack under pressure. Love also governs how power is released. Power without love becomes forceful. It pushes rather than invites, demands rather than serves. Love releases power with restraint and wisdom. It understands timing. It knows when to speak and when silence will protect more than words. This sensitivity preserves trust. Trust is the currency of lasting influence, and love is what keeps that currency from devaluing. Impact sustained by love remains effective across seasons. When results slow or resistance increases, love prevents bitterness. It keeps the heart open when disappointment tempts withdrawal. Many lose effectiveness not because they lack ability, but because they lose compassion. Love keeps compassion alive even when effort is misunderstood or unreciprocated. Love also protects from misuse of authority. Authority without love seeks control. Authority with love seeks growth. Control restricts potential. Love cultivates it. Those who operate in love do not need to dominate environments. Their presence alone creates safety. Safety allows people to grow, to listen, to change. This is how impact multiplies organically rather than being enforced. Love sustains endurance. When motivation is fueled by outcomes alone, energy drains quickly. When motivation is fueled by love, endurance increases. Love provides strength that does not depend on visible success. It allows a person to continue serving even when progress is slow because the value of the work is not reduced by delayed results. Love also reshapes correction. Correction without love produces shame. Correction with love produces growth. Love communicates truth without crushing identity. It confronts behavior while preserving dignity. This balance keeps relationships intact while change occurs. Impact that preserves relationships lasts longer than impact that leaves damage behind. Love broadens perspective. It allows a person to see beyond immediate goals and recognize long-term influence. Decisions are no longer made solely for short-term gains. Love asks how actions will affect others over time. This foresight prevents impulsive choices that may achieve quick success but create lasting harm. Love sustains humility. It reminds those who carry power that they are stewards, not owners. Power entrusted without humility becomes heavy. Love keeps humility active by maintaining gratitude and awareness of dependence. This posture protects the heart from pride and the mind from isolation. When love leads, influence becomes generational. It shapes culture, not just moments. People are not just changed, they are equipped to change others. Love multiplies impact by investing in people rather than extracting from them. This creates continuity. Impact does not end when presence leaves, it continues through those who were empowered. Love also preserves integrity. It aligns private actions with public influence. When love governs behavior in unseen places, credibility remains intact in visible ones. Integrity built on love does not fracture under scrutiny. It remains consistent because it is not performative. Ultimately, love is what allows power to remain pure as it expands. As responsibility increases, love keeps motives clear and actions grounded. It ensures that growth does not outpace character and that influence does not outrun wisdom. Love sustains impact by keeping the heart aligned with purpose, the hands gentle despite strength, and the mission alive long after the initial moment has passed. The weapon transforms atmospheres before it changes outcomes, because atmosphere governs what is possible long before results become visible. Many focus solely on outcomes, trying to fix what can be measured, counted, or proven, while ignoring the unseen environment that shapes those results. Atmospheres carry beliefs, expectations, fears, and agreements. When these remain unchanged, outcomes resist lasting transformation. The weapon works deeper than surface-level change. It addresses the climate before it confronts the condition. Atmospheres influence behavior without announcing themselves. A room filled with fear restricts creativity. A space dominated by hopelessness drains initiative. An environment shaped by faith invites courage, clarity, and movement. The weapon does not rush to correct behavior. It shifts the agreement behind it. When agreement changes, behavior follows naturally. This is why true transformation often feels subtle at first. Something lifts, resistance loosens, people breathe differently. Conversations change tone, possibility. Returns before progress appears. Those who carry this weapon learn to discern atmosphere before reacting to circumstances. They recognize when tension is not about the moment, but about an environment that has been cultivated over time. Instead of responding emotionally, they respond intentionally. They release peace into chaos, clarity into confusion, hope into heaviness. This is not denial of reality, it is leadership over it. Atmospheres respond to authority faster than circumstances do. Changing atmosphere requires presence, not performance. It is not about saying the right words or executing the perfect strategy. It is about carrying a different agreement into the space. People sense this before they understand it. Calm disarms anxiety. Confidence stabilizes uncertainty. Love softens resistance. The weapon works through who someone is being, not just what they are doing. Atmospheric change is often misunderstood because it does not always produce immediate visible results. Those who lack discernment may mistake it for inactivity. But beneath the surface, alignment is taking place. Roots are shifting. Resistance is weakening. The ground is being prepared for outcomes that will last. Skipping this step may produce quick wins, but they are fragile. Changing atmosphere builds foundations. This is why some environments seem resistant to progress no matter how much effort is applied. Strategies fail, energy drains, frustration grows. The issue is not the effort, it is the atmosphere. When the atmosphere shifts, effort becomes effective. Momentum replaces resistance. Cooperation replaces conflict. What once felt heavy begins to move with less force. The weapon transforms atmospheres by introducing a higher standard of truth. Lies lose influence when truth is present. Fear weakens when trust enters. Confusion dissolves when clarity is released. This transformation is not aggressive, it is authoritative. It does not argue with darkness, it displaces it. Light does not fight darkness, it removes its power simply by being present. Those who understand atmospheric influence become consistent carriers regardless of setting. They do not wait for ideal conditions, they become the condition. Whether in chaos or calm, they remain steady. This consistency trains environments to respond differently over time. What once resisted begins to cooperate. What once pushed back begins to open. Atmospheric change also protects sustainability. When outcomes change without atmospheric transformation, old patterns eventually return. But when atmosphere shifts, new outcomes are maintained. Culture changes, expectations rise, standards realign. This is how transformation lasts beyond a moment or a personality. It becomes embedded. The weapon does not rush outcomes because it values permanence. It understands that lasting change requires internal agreement before external evidence. This patience frustrates those who want instant results, but it produces depth. It ensures that when outcomes finally manifest, they are supported by an environment that can sustain them. Those who carry this weapon do not chase results, they steward atmosphere. They understand that when atmosphere aligns, outcomes follow naturally. They focus on presence over pressure, agreement over anxiety, alignment over urgency. In doing so, they become catalysts for change that cannot be easily reversed. Because what has been transformed is not just what happened, but the very environment in which everything now unfolds.